Yeah, time. Now it's time. Okay, back to Kibbud Avayim.
This one?
Back to Kibbud Avayim. Okay, so we're learning the definition of COVID and the definition of Meira, of fear, and we learned the various different things. Okay, now, the din of Kibbud Avayim is not only when they're alive, but even after they pass away. After they pass away, there's still a mitzvah of Kibbud Avayim, of honoring your father and mother. Now, how do you honor them after you pass away? So, after they pass away. So, number one, by behaving properly. Well, any mitzvah you do is good for them. It's their merit, their schus. But it says like this, that for the first year, you mention Hareini Kaporas Mishkovai, which they write always now Hacham. Just Hareini Kaporas Mishkovai. I am the forgiveness of his bed, meaning I should be forgiven. I should be his forgiveness. You know, whatever happens to them should happen to me. And it says, even if you write it or say it the first 12 months, you say Hareini Kaporas Mishkovai. Afterwards, you write Zal Zechron Levracha or Olav Hashalom or something like that, especially when you speak about them and so on. Now the question is very interesting, machlekes in halacha like this. What happens if your father, let's say, told you to do something while he was alive? So we learned if your father tells you something, your mother tells you something else, you have to listen to the father because the mother also has to listen to the father, unless it's against Torah. But what happens if your father told you something while you're alive and your mother told you to do something after your father passed away, which is contradictory to what he said? So are they still equal that you listen now to the father, not to the mother? Or do you say respect of the living is more important than the respect of the people that passed on? Like, which one is it? So it's interesting because the Neder Yehuda holds that the respect of the living has precedence over the people that passed away. And Rabbi Kiva Eiger argues on him, he said there's no difference. There's no difference if they're alive or dead. Father comes before, listening to the father comes before listening to the mother. Okay, now, even a father who's a total Rasha, even a child who's a mamzer, not because you call him a mamzer, he's a legitimate bastard, as they say, halachic mamzer, they still have to respect the father and mother. They still have to show respect, even though, obviously, if they tell you to go against Torah, you don't listen to them, but nevertheless, you're not allowed to hurt them, you're not allowed to speak chutzpah to them, you're not allowed to do all these things. Now, part of this mitzvah of respecting parents after they pass away is another question, halacha, saying Kaddish after a parent. Is that part of the mitzvah of Kibbud Avayim or not? Or is it a separate issue? So they bring down that some people say that, the Amshir Shlemos, that saying Kaddish is part of Kibbud Avayim, and some people say it, that the same thing, that you're fulfilling actually the mitzvah of Kibbud Avayim by saying Kaddish. Because like we learned already, Kaddish is beneficial for the neshama to be saved from punishment in Gehenna. Later on the Yortzeit, the purpose of saying Kaddish is to help the neshama go up higher and higher in Gan Eden. So there is actually a din of Kibbud Avayim. Now, what happens though, and this obviously cases exactly happen, if not the poskim wouldn't talk about it. There's 5 sons, and the father said, I want 4 sons to say Kaddish. The 5th son, I don't want him to say Kaddish for me. I don't want him to say Kaddish for me. So the halacha is that 5th son doesn't have to listen to the father. Why? Because if people see 4 sons are saying Kaddish and 1 son isn't, to think maybe he's a mamzer, maybe he's not his child, maybe he's who knows what, maybe it could be anything. So therefore then you're talking about personal dignity of the son, so then he doesn't have to listen to the father in the midst of kibbud avay.
But if there's only one son?
Huh?
What if there's only one son and the father says, I don't want him to say Kaddish for me?
So then it's the same point. According to many opinions, he should still say Kaddish because it's his obligation to do it. What?
Just understanding fundamentally, like when a parent instructs the son regarding business affairs,
he doesn't have to listen.
But what about life affairs? Relationship between spouses, how to live your life, stuff like that. Do you have to listen to your parents?
The responsibility of halacha, somebody just asked me that tonight, in fact. The responsibility of a husband first is to the spouse, then to the parents. If the parents get in the way of the marriage, then they're not obligated to listen to the parent at all. Now, a woman, generally speaking, once a woman gets married, her first obligation is to the husband, not anymore to the parents. So therefore, halacha says clearly, the obligation of the wife is to the husband first, and then, if possible, to the parents also. But there shouldn't be any, like if the parents tell the wife not to listen to the husband or whatever, she's not allowed to listen to them. She has to listen to the husband. Once though children get married, the obligation is to the spouses before the parents. And there's a lot of cases, especially in certain communities, where sons are married to the mother, and then when they get married to a wife, whatever the reason is, you know what I'm talking about. So then the mother wants to control the son instead of him being with the wife, so to speak. So then halachically, they're not allowed to listen to the mother. And there's another interesting din when a child also doesn't have to listen to a parent. If the son wants to learn in a certain yeshiva, I'm not saying you shouldn't take your parents' opinion in mind, obviously. But bottom push comes to shove. A child wants to marry a certain girl. A girl wants to marry a certain boy. The parents don't want. Push comes to shove. Obviously, if a normal kid, they should listen to the parents. They're older, mature, experienced. Bottom line is, does the son have to, or the daughter, the Rabbi says the same thing, a daughter, he doesn't have to, they don't have to listen to the parent. They can marry who they want. And if the son wants to learn in a certain yeshiva, and the parent doesn't want to this yeshiva, wants him to go to a different yeshiva, according to halacha, you don't have to listen to the parents when it comes to learning Torah or marriage. Halachically, you don't. Again, practically speaking, it's definitely better for a child to get the parents, because they're usually right, by the way. Kids fall in love and who knows what happens. But halacha, push comes to shove, and the Rebbe points out a very interesting din. Where is this din in Rambam and Shulchan Aruch? This din that you don't have to listen to your parents when it comes to learning to marriage, correct? Where should that din be? It should be in the laws of learning Torah and in the laws of marriage. Over there it should say that learning Torah is so important, the law of kibbud avayim doesn't apply. Marriage is so important, it doesn't. Where is the halacha? No, in the laws of kibbud avayim. In the laws of kibbud avayim, it says you don't have to listen to the parents for those two things. And the Rebbe points out, according to the rules in Rambam, what the halacha means, by not listening to them, you're fulfilling the mitzvah of kibbud avayim. The fact that the halacha is in the laws of kibbud avayim, that means part of kibbud avayim is not listening to them under certain circumstances. So therefore, la halacha, it's halachically that you're not supposed to listen to them.
What if the marriage is not a good marriage?
Of whom? So, after they're married, you mean already?
No. They want to marry and it's not a good marriage. I mean,
So they could influence the kid, they can get them to see somebody or whatever. Halachically, push comes to shove. According to halacha, a boy comes to a Rav and says, I want to marry this girl, my parents are against it. Okay? Obviously the Rav will say, did you discuss it? And he'll just talk. But push comes to shove. The kid said, what's the halacha? Halacha says he can marry her.
if it's not a Yiddish,
No, that's a whole different story. We're not talking about somebody that you're not allowed to marry. The parent doesn't like the kid for whatever reason. No, if it's forbidden.
before marriage, after marriage, that's normal.
No, okay, so. But then the halacha is that you don't have to, and by not listening to them, that's the way you mekayim the mitzvah kibbut avein. So coming back to the point before that, so the wife's obligation is primarily to the husband and then to the parents. But again, the husband should have a minimal amount of brains to understand, like we said yesterday, serve them first, or whatever it may be, that they should do it properly. So bottom line is, even if the parent is not religious at all, okay, then even then you have to respect them, even though you don't have to listen to them when they tell you to do something forbidden. Next thing is like this. If somebody sees the father or mother doing something against halacha, the son sees the father or mother doing something against halacha. So the din is, you're not allowed to tell him, hey, you know you're sinning, you're not allowed to do this. You have to tell them, because that's disrespectful. You have to tell them, didn't you once teach us, or didn't we once learn such and such a halacha? Because then you're hinting it to them, you're not telling them you did something wrong. I'll never forget, I was a kid in Chicago. I must have been 10, 11, because 12 already I was in New York. It was Tisha B'Av, my father's shul, and some people, whatever, were sitting on regular chairs. And, more from was sitting on the floor. So this kid, who was a yeshiva bacher, now he's a very big Rosh Yeshiva in New York, not a Lubavitcher, a very big Rosh Yeshiva in New York, and he said to his father, I heard it myself, I flipped. He said, Daddy, don't be like the illiterates in the back who are sitting on a chair. That's exactly what you're not allowed to say. What?
At what point did he say it?
When his father was sitting on a chair, Tisha B'Av.
His father was sitting.
Yeah. So he basically said to him, you're like all the other illiterates in the back. I'm sure now he wouldn't, well, his father passed away already, but he wouldn't say it now because now he obviously he learned differently. Okay, what?
When you say that your father didn't you learn, but if you didn't learn with him,
no, you didn't say didn't we learn with you. You said, isn't it to say in Torah this and this and this? You make it in a hinting way that they don't feel that you're telling them off. That you're not allowed to learn. You're never allowed to embarrass a parent. In fact, it's brought down in Halacha, if your father is screaming at you because he thought you did something and you didn't, you shouldn't say, you're wrong, I didn't do it. You should accept it, and that's it. Because telling them that you're wrong, basically, is lack of kibbut aveim.
It's not that bad.
Huh?
It's not that bad.
You're not telling him who did it. He didn't ask you who did it. What?
The mother that told him to do something.
Oh, that's another din. If the mother told you to do something, and your father says, or vice versa, your father says to you, who told you to do that? And you know if you say ma, he's going to get angry at your mother, you have to take the blame yourself. You can't say ma told me to do it, or dad told me to do it. That you're not allowed to do. Because then you're causing the spouse to get angry at the other spouse. So then you're causing disrespect for the other one. What?
It's the story with the
Jacob and the boys, wouldn't that be disrespecting?
What? No, they did that according to Halacha. They did. You mean when Shimon and Levi killed out the city?
No, put him on the coat and stealing the birthright from Esau.
No, he didn't steal it. It was his legitimately.
His mother told him to do something.
His mother told him to do something.
His father asked him, aren't they your boys?
Yeah, but he didn't lie. If you look in Rashi, Rashi explains he didn't lie. When he said, I am Esav, he said, I am. Stop. Esav is your firstborn. Like they say, it depends how you sing it. Like we said many times, but you said many times, you confess, I sinned. Yeah? So you could say three ways. You could say, I sinned. You say, I sinned. You say the words. But you say, I sinned? That's not confession. Another guy says, I sinned and I'm planning to do it again. That's also not confession. Says the same words. Depends how you sing them. You know what I mean? So that's what it is with this. Okay.